Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. If you're on YouTube or Twitch, you are seeing our faces for the first time. We've entered a new dawn of the Create Unknown, for better or worse. Here we are. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, and I prepared for this so poorly. Today I committed the cardinal sin of of podcasting, which is I drank lemonade.
Oh,
You can't drink lemonade on a recording day because it just it's like it gives you like a half a pack a day of Marlboro Red's voice. And I thought, okay, how do I spin it? Maybe the first time on camera live streaming like this, maybe I just craft like a sultry persona. Maybe I try to trick people into thinking that like I'm like the Kathleen Turner of this podcast.
Kathleen Turner. You're just right into the Unk Slop references immediately.
That's beyond unk slop. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, I didn't even realize it. It was like 12:30 and you were saying, "Oh, I'm kind of done with meetings for the day. Let's record." And I just like finished the last glug of cherry lemonade. And I'm like,
Yeah. As if recording today was just completely unknown and a total surprise to you. I mean, let's not be ridiculous about that because we've had a lot of things planned. We've been talking about Unk Slop and movies for the past few weeks, and there have been so many developments on this topic. It's been one of those things where the universe has really sort of coalesced around a TCU topic. It's happened once again, and this time it's like Unk Slop movies. So there are so many things I want to go through and hit on this episode with you. But the first thing, the place that I want to start is that our beloved admin on the Discord, Conrad, sent this
did
video
you say
from.
beloved?
I
Is
did
there a
say
problem
beloved.
with the connection? Because I thought you described Conrad as beloved.
Right. I mean, he's beloved to me. How would you describe him?
I'll let beloved stand.
Okay. All right. Matt's arch nemesis, my good close friend, Conrad, sent this short actually by a fella named Treehouse Detective, who has a theory as to basically the genesis of Unk Slop and how it's differentiated between the generations, between Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. So I will just it's not complicated, and I found it very compelling. So I'll give you the gist. Here's the gist. According to Treehouse Detective, he believes that because of the dawn of cable television that really began with Gen X and then grew to epic proportions with millennials, those two generations were basically inundated by content on TV. This was
Yeah.
before the internet. I mean, even when the internet was new, it wasn't really that compelling. It was like AOL chat rooms and not a whole lot else. So
A lot of
these two,
GeoCities sites.
a lot of GeoCities, Angel Fire websites, these two generations really saw the meteoric rise of cable television, in which TV went from, you know, 10 channels all of a sudden to 100 channels. And you would have channels dedicated to a very specific niche, like Cartoon Network just played cartoons all day, and Comedy Central was just funny stuff, and Sci-Fi Channel was just science fiction and nothing else because uh, the ad revenue was growing. They were making so much money. And the way that they had to populate these channels that were now 24 hours was by buying old catalogs of things like Looney Tunes, which is a really old cartoon that wasn't our generation at all. But we were watching Looney Tunes because it was on. And
Yes.
so we got this cross generational um, we were uh, basically shown cross generational content. I watched the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers and I Love Lucy, stuff that was like super old, and Gilligan's Island. and the
Yeah.
Brady Bunch and Happy Days. Like I watched everything. We watched everything and got
Yes.
this like ridiculous um catalog, like rich catalog of TV and movies because it was on all the time. And you who like me, yes, I'm like 100% a TV person, TV
Mhm.
child. You who like really would prefer to like break open walnuts in your basement
Yeah.
still have like
Butternuts. Yeah.
what is it?
Butternuts. They
Break
were
open
real sticky.
butternuts.
They're so
Yeah.
sticky.
You even have a robust sense of like a tremendous amount of different TV and film.
Yeah, there was you had no choice. It was, if you're gonna watch TV, you're going to, get these shows. There were only so many of them. The one that jumps out to me, this is like a TV deep cut, right? Where I almost feel bad if anybody gets the reference. There was a show called The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, and it ran for like 4 years in the late '50s. It's where Bob Denver got known before Gilligan's Island. He was like a beatnik character. He was Dobie Gillis's best friend. His name was Maynard, and it was kind of an iconic character. But this show ran. It was popular at the time. It ran 3 4 years, and there's no reason that people our age should know it. But it was on. It was on. So you probably ran across it. Most people, saw it for 2 seconds and found another channel. But the point is that it was there and you didn't have to scour, television to find it. And there weren't 50 episodes per season. So there was like a finite amount of The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. And so over the course of years, you got a really good sense of the show, even if you didn't watch every episode. You didn't watch it in sequence. Um, enough so that I know that Bob Denver's character of Maynard, who was a beatnik, was an iconic TV character of the late '50s, even though I wasn't a fan. Um, and so Treehouse Detective, is that what you said his
Treehouse
name was?
Detective. Yep.
Treehouse stuff. Yeah, that was a good rundown.
But
Um,
but let me I didn't finish it.
okay.
So the other side of it is that Gen Z grew up with social media, with the internet, with YouTube, and so many options for entertainment coming out every single moment that their lives became a constant trying to keep up with all of the influx of new stuff, so they knew what everybody else was talking about, that there was no discernible reason for them to go backwards. Like, they're not
Yeah.
going back and watching Rocky 4. Like, why would you when you have to know what, happened on the stream last night, or the latest Mr. Beast video, or the Minecraft thing that everyone whatever Roblox is. So
Yeah.
they're
What
like,
happened in Roblox overnight?
I don't know what any of that means, but that's the distinction, and that's what I found compelling.
Hey, Lord Vega is in. Um, I've been a longtime admirer of Lord Vega's skills, but he brings up I Love Lucy, Andy Griffith Show, Dukes of Hazzard, Beverly Hillbillies. Yeah, these were on starting like 3 p.m. until 9 or 10, and everybody was seeing them when they turned on the TV, even if it was to click past them. Taking the knob of the 13 channels and chunk past, but you still knew they existed, and you knew enough to know, even if you weren't a Dukes of Hazzard fan or something, you knew who the main characters were, you knew the setting, you knew the plot, and everybody had this shared cultural knowledge. Now, I mean, we've talked about this in the context of Vsauce, how this insanely large and successful thing worldwide, how many people do you run into in the general population who know what that is? Um, it's yeah, 13, not only 13 channels, but people need to realize too that the remote control in the past was actually the smallest. It was the youngest person of the household. That's that
Oh,
was the
just
remote
human.
control unit
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
whoever was born last.
Yeah. Can I tell you that I did not watch Dukes of Hazzard, but I know Daisy Duke, I know the General Lee,
Yeah.
I know Boss Hog, like I know
Yeah.
all of this stuff about the show I didn't even watch.
I didn't watch it either, and I own a pair of, Converse high top style, like all-star style shoes that are generally themed. The design, has the '01 and whatever, because I saw them at a thrift store a couple years ago, and I'm like, "Oh my god, they're General Lee shoes," and I flip it over, and it's, 9.5 or 10, and I'm like, "This was made for me." I throw my $5 down, and now I have a pair of Dukes of Hazzard shoes, despite never having been a fan of the show, and it's still cool to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the theory. I
Mhm.
thought that you had some further thoughts on this because when we talked about it yesterday, uh, you
Yeah,
seemed
yeah.
more critical of it than you're being right now.
I think I think there's I think it can be explained, a bit more clearly, and the key to this is actually you, Kevin Lieber of
Why?
Vsauce 2, because you made a video some years ago, about a limit to friends, a cognitive limit to the amount of friends that you have. Can
Yeah,
you
Dunbar's number.
Dunbar's number. What was
Yeah.
in a sentence or two, what is the statement of Dunbar's number?
Well, there's a cognitive limit to the number of people that you can know, and this comes from Robin Dunbar. That's why it's called Dunbar's number, and essentially that there's a number, whether it's like 150, maybe 200 people that you can know, sort of like on an intimate level, in which like you know about them, they know about you, and beyond that, there's just you don't have the brain capacity to really know at like a serious level, not like tangentially, like, oh, I know who Sylvester Stallone is. Okay, I don't know Sylvester Stallone. I know who he is. Well, he's not in my Dunbar's number. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, at some point your brain maxes out with that, with relationships.
I think the same thing applies to this concept. I think there's a TV and movie friends list where there's a sort of cognitively finite number of things that you can keep track of and keep up with, whether it's YouTube channels, TV shows, whatever. And in the past that Treehouse Detective was talking about, there were so few things, relatively speaking, that everybody's Dunbar number of TV and film knowledge contained the same stuff. There weren't 1,500 TV shows where everybody is, keeping track mentally of the 100 or 150 that they think are best. There was like 150, and everybody had the same store of knowledge there. And so when he talks about cable breaking this open, yeah, it's reinforcing some of the old stuff with reruns, and it's introducing niche channels. It's introducing just a shocking number of new projects that don't go anywhere and kind of drop off the collective memory. But now you open up one streaming service and it's got uncountable numbers of things. And there are only so many that you can really understand and carry with you without, there are only so many that you can carry with you before you have to replace them quickly. Like it's a revolving door of sorts. That revolving door was extremely slow until like maybe 10 years ago. We all had the same people walking through it, and they were shuffling their feet. The quality, dictated the older stuff that would stick around. The things like Cheers that was, continue. Seinfeld, now Friends is had staying power from its heyday into even now. There were a couple of those, but everything else just churning, churning through that door, absolutely churning. And because of that, you and I, we're perfect examples on this because we watch completely different stuff. I don't even know if there's one show that we both watch and enjoy. Is there one show now that did you watch Landman, where the
I
Paramount Plus stuff?
I haven't watched it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to or won't enjoy it. I will say that I'm in a bit of a funk, generally speaking, with television, which is really
Okay.
a me problem where I'm kind of bored by all of it. Which is again, this is just like totally a me problem. I've been enjoying reading a lot more than watching TV shows for whatever reason, which is very, very, very strange and a departure for me personally. But that's where I'm at now.
This is the same concept with books though, too. When we were so I like books that were made, marketed toward kids, from the past. I just enjoy this as a thing. I sent you a picture of one that I picked up in Albania a week or 2 ago that was, Last of the Mohicans from James Fenimore Cooper, and it was printed, as one of those, like, children's classics type books. Well, that canon of 40 or 50 books that young adults, um, eh, that young adults should know, and the ones who read a lot did know. Treasure Island was, another popular one. Like that didn't really change because there weren't shocking amounts of books coming out. They weren't dirt cheap. They weren't free or 99 cents on the iPad or Kindle. Um, it maintained the same way that the older TV and film did, mentally, and collectively. Well, now it's a different scene. There's like, you would know a bunch of things in the one genre that you were into if you were a kid. But if you take, 20 kids out of a sixth grade class who are all committed readers, their shared list of stuff is not, oh, yes, of course, we've all read Treasure Island. The hell you have. Nobody, none of you have. It's a different scene now because the supply is insanity compared to what it used to be. And there hasn't been, a gatekeeper and an Unk Slop Sherpa to say, yeah, you can have fun with all this new stuff and be selective about it, whatever. But here are the core couple dozen things that you need to know because we all need to know them. And it's actually important that we do have that shared experience. The same thing happens with books, TV, probably video games. You can speak to that. I can't. Uh, but it changes absolutely everything. And I think it's a version of that Dunbar's number issue. So you have the tech side that Treehouse Detective explained really well, the logistics of media with cable and streaming services and niche channels, and then around the clock, just everything. Now on demand, which is an incredibly new thing that whatever you want to see, you can choose and then click a few things and get it, as opposed to waiting for Dobie Gillis to be over. So the show you maybe do want to watch starts. Um, that's one side of it. But then to me, there's that cognitive side, where how much can you really truly juggle in terms of what's important to you, what's meaningful to you, and how is that going to match up with the same sort of Dunbar's number construction that somebody different has.
Well, now it seems impossible. Like, let's just admit, like, I think that the way that the environment in which we're living in now does not really make that possible. So that is why I think it's useful at this point to have Unkslop Sherpas, if for those few people who are interested, and and speaking of fewer and fewer people being interested, particularly in movies, another thing that I wanted to mention that just came out since last week was the Hollywood Reporter wrote an article titled "Film Students Are Having Trouble Sitting Through Movies, Professor Says." And I was like, dude, like, now it's like official that, you know, the mainstream media has caught hold of this new thing that we've been talking about, where for weeks now, that kicked off, like in our Discord with an actual film student, Weezer
Yeah.
Good in LA, telling us like, yes, I'm a film student. I talk to the kids in my class. They don't watch movies.
Yeah.
And they don't
Yeah.
care. And they don't care that that they don't.
Yeah.
Just not
I
interested.
I I mentioned, before we officially started, I mentioned, that I talked to this, film professor in, Tirana in Albania, and, I was working on a project that wasn't, relevant to this discussion, but in the off time when the camera wasn't rolling, I was like, "Hey, I've gotta ask you all of these different things because what you do is precisely what we've been talking about for a few weeks." And I said, what is the challenge with students who are 20, 21 years old and getting them to be interested in the older stuff? And he echoed really what we said, where there is a almost a burden of proof, that you have to convince them that it matters, that
Uh-huh.
they should be interested. And it really is, like, how do you get your toddler to eat broccoli? It's that level of thing when they can actually go in the other room and, it's just a giant candy store. And it's like all cookies and hot pockets and jelly beans and like everything that's awesome, but awful for you. It's just a small percentage of kids, who, are gonna say, "You know what? I really like food. I like nutrition. I like the science of it all. I like the sociological aspects of eating together. I want to understand why steamed broccoli is such a good choice." Yeah, okay. It's like 1 in 1,000, you know? Everybody else is just jamming, Dubai chocolate in their mouth at this point.
Yeah. So that was the next thing that came up, was the just the Hollywood Reporter writing about what we'd been talking about, which I thought
Yeah.
was validating of this being like just a thing in general. Another thing that's going around that I can't remember if I talked about on the podcast or if I talked about after I stopped recording last week and was just, chatting with our patrons in the Discord. But I threw out this idea that's really not that ingenious. It's pretty obvious that, if you grew up watching movies that are like 5 out of 10s,
Mhm.
and so then a 7 out of 10 comes along, and to you, that's a 10 out of 10,
Yeah.
right? That it's going to like warp your perception of what a 10 out of 10 is. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah,
When you think 7 out of 10s are 10s out of 10s, but that's not your fault. Like that's what you have been, privy to.
yeah. That's your frame of
It's not
reference.
like a judgmental thing. Like it makes total sense, right? Like that's how that would work. Well,
Mm.
this concept has come up recently in regards to this bizarre new, like, historical rewriting of the Star
Oh.
Wars sequels being great. Like, the
Yeah,
prequels, the
yeah.
prequels, the prequels being great.
Right.
All of a sudden, people are talking about how the prequels are great, which they are not great. And
They're not great. No. No, they're
no
not.
one, like, no one at the time, no one thought they were great at the time. It was like
Not
a
really.
a just a cultural, like, punch on the nose when those movies came out, because the
Yeah,
hype beforehand was met by, like, a just resounding disappointment,
yeah.
afterwards. Like, the mismatch there was catastrophic.
I don't know how it could have played out. Like that is really an impossible task, thinking back to it, to deliver in such a way that, like, the new people are happy and all the old fans are happy. Uh, but yeah, it's like seeing on people discuss the stuff on Twitter. The conversation has completely shifted where um, I guess there's enough distance from those movies now where people who are 30 can say, "Yeah, when I was 10, this was incredible," and that's valid. That's completely valid. Um, but it's a different perspective, different experience. The thing that I've been thinking about is I wish I could know how those movies would have been received if they were the beginning of Star Wars, if there had been no, episodes 4, 5, and 6. The world didn't know anything about it, and we're introducing this world and this story and all of that, and we're starting with, episode 1. I wish we had that, like, control group to know. This is what we should do people are like, "Oh, what do I do with the islands and areas that have uncontacted tribes? What are the ethics of" No, no, no. The important thing to do here is to contact them and just show them episodes 1 through 3.
But maybe that's what this is, though. Maybe that's what has happened naturally is that kids did grow up with the prequels first,
Yeah,
said, these are awesome, and they are awesome to them. I just remember at that time, people just made fun of those movies relentlessly for being
kinda.
stupid, for like Jar Jar Binks and the pod racing and,
Yeah, yeah.
well, everything else that came along with it. They were like the butt of a joke
Yes.
for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, and it didn't help too. This is unfair to the films themselves, but the level of the merchandising was comical. Like, it was if you remember this, everything I don't know if it was like, Pizza Hut, you'd get a soda and there'd be a giant Jar Jar Binks to slurp, through. It just was everywhere. Everywhere you looked had, the movie-related merchandise, to such a schlocky degree, and it was this massively saturated thing, that would have been appropriate if, it had the same impact as the first 3. But yeah, that combination where it's like, okay, you have pod racing and midichlorians, popped up. Spencer said it in the chat. And then you also have to suck your Diet Coke through Jar Jar Binks's face. It's like,
Well,
yeah,
so there's all this there's this, like I said, there's this revival of the prequels. Actually, these movies are awesome actually, and those of us who, lived through that era, uh I guess we're teenagers at that time. We remember that, like, generally speaking, these films were not well received. So anyway, my point is this guy on Twitter, Pierre Lafoe, writes, he would like to introduce a new term. Okay. And this
okay.
new term is slopflation. All right.
Slopflation.
Slopflation. And
Okay.
the definition of slopflation is movies that at the time of their release were considered slop, but
Mhm.
are now auteur driven masterpieces due to the quality of slop overall decreasing. Okay.
Interesting.
Which
Yeah.
which aligns like perfectly with what I was saying with like the whole 5 out of 10s or 7 out of 10s or 7 out of 10s or 10s out of 10s. It's like a handicap in golf or something. And yeah, he mentions Pirates of the Caribbean, Michael Bay Transformers. I mean, those are his examples. I would say
Okay.
like the Pirates of the Caribbean, at least the first one, was a really
That was
good
very
blockbuster.
good.
Like
Yeah, it was a great movie.
it was not slop, but it goes into the territory of like what is slop. And I think people are kind of considering like anything with mass appeal to be slop. And
Right.
I mean,
That's not the case. That's just
I
not the
don't
case.
agree with that. No, it's actually
No.
really hard to make something that a lot of people like. So I don't see how that could
Yeah.
automatically qualify it as slop.
Yeah. No, but that is a really interesting concept though. that basically the bar has been raised because the floor has been lowered. You know, this is such a fantastic trick in policy and statistics, is raising the bar by lowering the floor. And it feels like that's what's happened with slopflation, where movies that were okay in the past, they were fine, they were maybe good, have just been succeeded by things that are so much worse that their relative value is like, yeah, you know what? Compared to this, that was actually pretty good. It goes beyond okay. Like, yeah, that was actually really, really good. I can completely believe that this is happening, and it's understandable to me.
Yeah. Yeah. How could it not happen? Okay, so that's slopflation. Now,
What a great term. I love it.
um, now that we're like half an hour into this podcast, that was me just giving you a rundown of sort of
That was the
the,
introductory sentence.
the current
Yeah.
events
Yeah.
surrounding this topic, or sort of, yeah, like the latest updates on all of this stuff. We can actually get into my new theory that you haven't heard yet. So, this will
Okay.
be a fresh reaction
By
from
the way,
you.
I have to show you this because
Okay.
you know, you've seen my desk, and it's like a cavalcade of horrors, and I'd like to think some awesome parts. But you know, even though I myself am not into really old films very much, I like old Hollywood and its people. And one of the things that I collect is relic cards that have swatches of clothing that these actors and actresses wore. And I just got some. I got the mail as you were setting up this stream, and I actually got some. So they're right on the desk. I have a Claudette Colbert with a little piece of some frock or dress or something that she wore. You know, she was married to Charlie Chaplin, wasn't she?
Uh, he had a few
One of his
wives.
few. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Gene Tierney, who was in Swing Time with Fred Astaire, I believe, in 48 or 9. Yeah, so I really do appreciate the old stuff, even though when we're done, I'm not going to I'm not gonna go, you know, crank up any of these films and make a night of it.
No, not going to burn through. Some like it hot.
I'm laughing at Jen's comment in the chat that maybe I'd prefer a dried out scentless turd to a fresh stinky one in my yard, but they're both crap.
Wow, that's poetry, actually.
Somebody is resisting slopflation.
All right, so here's my new theory. It has to do with writing. Okay, it has to do
Okay.
specifically with the writing that we're seeing. That first of all is largely considered like millennial writing, like
Mm,
millennial chungus kind of writing is are sort of the terms, but millennial writing is what it like
yeah.
typically is referred to as. And my first point of contention with that is that it's Gen X writing. It's
Yeah.
not millennial writing. Like Gen X is 100% like objectively the jury is out, the verdict is in. Gen X is responsible for what the millennials are being blamed for when it comes to this type of Joss Whedon writing.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's like a ancillary bonus Kevin theory that you're going to be subjected to. The name Gen X is no fun to say, so nothing. They don't get blamed for anything because no one wants to say Gen X or Gen
That's what
Xers,
you
like
should do.
Xers. Like no one
If
will
it
say
looks like
that.
your generation is going to go south in terms of reputation, then you just start calling it a thing that's just unpleasant to put through your mouth.
Yeah, it's no fun. It
Yeah, and
isn't.
if you wanna boost the rep, you come up with, like, a snazzy, fluid, really easy, like, cool label, "Life is good." You know,
Yeah,
Gen Z is a great label. Zoomer, it's a great label.
great.
These are super smooth. But, yeah, Gen X is, like, it's kind of harsh, isn't it?
It's
Yeah,
terrible. It's terrible, and I think it's an X problem, which is why the renaming
yeah.
Twitter to X has been a disaster. like, still it's been years and no one wants to call it X. Like X is a
Yeah.
harsh and terrible thing to say. It's no fun. So
It's
that's
always
my
been
side rant.
yeah, it's always been linguistically a difficult sound. The X is really a KS, together, and it just doesn't have the cleanliness that almost every other letter and sound has going back to Greek language. And so if you want to have a generation, the first thing you should do is go back to antiquity and just start mouthing things. Just start, pick up a book that you can't read and sound it out. Be like, oh, that sounds cool. That sounds really awful. And that's how you choose your moniker for your generation.
Yeah. Um, in the episode chat, there's a bit of a rebuttal from MathWiz saying that they're pretty sure that millennials are eating up
Mm,
the millennial slop, though. So if
yeah.
they're the consumers, then do they get the blame? And I think that that's fair. So because maybe it doesn't,
Yeah.
if there's no one to eat the slop, then the slop factory shuts down,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
the Gen X are the slop chefs, but millennials are the slop eaters, slop pigs, slop
Yep.
hogs. And so they're
Slogs.
the ones getting the blame, which I think is
Yeah.
fair. That's fair.
Yeah. And I've mentioned this in the past that I think it's a twofold problem where you have the millennials who are quite happy with this. And if they're happy, like that's what can you do? Right? If this is what they want and there are people to give them what they want, well, you're going to get more slop. And I also think that it's expansion internationally, where there are a lot of parts of the world that have had um, less sophisticated entertainment industries until very recently, and they don't mind some of the slop either. So like this is unfair at first for me to say this, but Bollywood is an example here where a lot of Bollywood stuff is what a critic would say is slop in terms of plot complexity and stock characters and stuff like that. Historically, there was a lot of that, and it's great entertainment. It's very good stuff. It's awesome, but it doesn't have it's not going to blow away Scorsese. Well, if you have lots of people in lots of different markets who are perfectly happy with, some of these things that are not super sophisticated, and this is not a judgment against that because anybody who has listened to this podcast for more than 10 minutes should know that the things that I love are like anti sophistication. I like the dumbest things ever. I like just you know, movies that have, like, no surprises and no depth. I I I I love things that are not sophisticated, so it's not a judgment thing. But when your market expands from, "I need to make a movie that everybody, 100,000,000 or in the past 75,000,000, 60,000,000 people in the United States are going to talk about for months with everybody they know at work and with their friends and all of this stuff." If that's your task, and then you go to, I want something that's gonna be streamed 100,000,000 times on Netflix worldwide, and you're dealing with a completely different audience that has different tastes and different standards, um, well, yeah, you're gonna meet that audience where it is, as opposed to saying, like, "Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed, some simpler Bollywood films for 30 years, but, now you really need to up your game to impress us." That's not gonna work. So the expansion on the markets has had a tremendous, tremendous effect on the style of content and what that content is. So you have the millennials who they've been raised on not quite slop, but slop adjacent before they got into full slop mode now. And then you have newer markets that are perfectly okay with less sophisticated material.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about a really specific thing that is designated as like millennial writing. And also, I
Mhm.
will because my thoughts are malleable, I will change my perspective on uh, it. Uh, it shouldn't. I'm not saying it should be called. I'm blaming Gen X for inventing it and popularizing it,
Mhm.
but I will adhere to calling it millennial writing
Okay.
because millennials, sort of took that torch from them in
Yeah.
both consuming it and regurgitating it. So let's just be okay with that. I'm okay with that.
They took the
But
torch and burned down the past and then
ugh,
ran full speed ahead with the torch. Let's
it's
be
so
honest
so
about what they did with the torch.
here. I don't know where to start with this. I will. I guess I should start with what is millennial writing, and then
Yeah.
because my other theory is like it's attached to this, but it's like sort of different. Things are going to get complicated, but so I don't. I hope you don't have anything else to do for the next hour.
No, my SD card on the backup recording, I have 118 hours left
Beautiful.
of space on that. So that's the
All right.
amount, that's the latitude you've got. Can you
All
compress
right.
this to a 118-hour conversation? If it's a yes, then we proceed.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Well, I'm willing to try. So this millennial writing is this like there's like a couple of forms of it, but it is often snarky. It's often neurotic, and it's often saying things that I would say are out of character for the scene and the moment and the character. And so examples of this are like the classic one that people make fun of is from this video game named Forspoken, which is
I
one of
don't
the
know
things I
this.
put no, no, it's one of the things I put in the thumbnail, and you were like, "What is this?" It's one of the
Oh,
things in the thumbnail of
that's the one on the right, the
yeah,
lady on the right?
it's the late yeah, right, right. It's
Okay.
from a video game that's was like it flopped really hard because it was like it's like the poster child of this type of writing where there's like a scene where this everyday girl gets powers and she's at one point says like I just moved that with my freaking mind. It's something like that.
Okay.
I just moved that with my freaking mind. Okay,
Uh,
it's like that type of dialogue. There were a couple of other like millennial chungus things that went a bit viral at the end of last year with another video game called Metroid Prime 4,
mhm.
where one of the instances was okay, so this is like a sci-fi bounty hunter out in outer space video game. Did you ever play the original Metroid on
On
NES?
NES? Yeah, the original.
Okay,
Yes,
so you
and it
know
was
what Metroid is.
ridiculously difficult for me to play. It was hard, like, in terms of controlling, the character. It was a tough game when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. So you know what Metroid is. Anyway, in the
Yes.
new one, there are all these annoying NPCs that talk in millennial speak. One of them, there's this instance where there's like this really nerdy dude. He's just like a generic nerd, and I don't know what happens. He like he's on like an alien planet, like falls down a hole or something, like into like a scary pit. And, he's like laying on his back and he's like, well, on one hand, I'm trapped on this uninhabitable, like, hellscape of a alien planet. But on the other hand, I'm not sitting in a cubicle next to Chad, who, microwaves his fish sandwich and stinks up the office every day. So, which one's better? Like, this is what he says. It's
This is
something like that. I'm
horrible.
paraphrasing, but like, this is
Yeah,
what he
yeah.
says, right? So, are you starting to understand? Like, it's completely contrived dialogue that's
Yes.
like quirky and silly and kind of quippy, but like,
Yep.
under no circumstances uh, it would somebody in that position say these words.
Yeah. Yeah, Macadundee says that this style used to be called the Tumblr style.
Oh,
Veterans of the internet remember when Tumblr was in its heyday. But I forget what year Tumblr went it changed, and, everybody from there, shifted over to, Twitter at the time. Um, but yeah, there definitely was a distinct moment where you had this super on the nose dialogue that no one would ever say in real life. They wouldn't say in that situation. And it also encompassed the things that you as a viewer should be figuring out to be an active viewer. Like we've talked about this many times in the past with informational educational content on how nobody wants to learn anything. They kind of don't unless it's a really like nuts and bolts. I have a problem that I need to be solved. You know, I watch a lot of videos where people fix things on lawn tractors because I have that problem. I have, the part has broken and I haven't ever changed one before. And I'm happy to see somebody guide me through it on the nose. And as a result, my mower works, my chainsaw works. That's awesome. But when you apply that stuff to generally educational content, it's really boring and it really stinks. What people love to do though is to think through a topic as it's being presented to them, where they're getting some information from the person or the video, and anybody who's been in school knows which teacher they preferred, the one that just spit straight, even coherent and well organized information. That wasn't probably as good an experience to you as the person who was using the information to then think through in real time with you as the student anything about the topic. Right. Well, even in fiction or a video game, a movie, whatever, you have to give the viewer the opportunity to play that role where there's information that characters in the scene are giving them, but then they get to think through what's happening and realize, well, actually actually I think this girl is in love with this guy. I think she's actually not annoyed by him, that maybe she's annoyed at the fact that uh, she likes him so much despite him being on paper nobody she'd ever want to date. That's different than the girl saying right on the nose that's like, "Zoinks! Yeah, Steve is nothing like what, mystery date told me I'd marry." It's like, "No, this is stupid. It's not very good at all." And it cheapens the viewer experience completely. There's no connection there at all. And I think this is spoon feeding the things that you should pick up on as a viewer is, it's an infection. And I don't know what cures it when when the writing is in that style and that seems to be rewarded, which, as you've said before, increasingly so as things are produced for, I'm on my phone at the same time and I actually need somebody to tell me everything that's happening.
Right. So when you were, yeah, sort of connecting it to new literalism, I was going to rebut that by saying it's not that, but actually I think it is exactly that. Because what you're talking about with a character talking organically based upon who they are, what their background is, what they're feeling in that moment, really requires the audience to pay attention,
Mhm.
right? Whereas if you just say something silly, like egads, can't believe that happened,
Yeah.
you don't have to pay attention. Like you can just still have that on a background and sort of know what's happening. I want to give you one more example and then I want to go into like several other ideas that I had. Because this one bothered me a lot too. Is that again in Metroid Prime 4? So
Okay.
Samus is a bounty hunter, right? And then there is this like federation of soldiers or something that she's interacting with.
Mhm.
One of the soldiers comes up to her, right? And is like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm meeting you. I'm like totally freaking out right now. You are the coolest." Like fangirling out, right?
Okay.
Which is like, completely erases any idea of like chain of command, right? Like you would
Mm,
not, a soldier would never act that way, like in front of their commanding officer or like towards someone. I don't know if there is like an association between Samus and the Federation or whatever, but still, like a soldier, like the entire point of like boot camp and all of the training that they go through and everything is the opposite of that. It's not
yeah.
to like fangirl out uh, like that and just be silly. And it's to be like, stoic and follow protocol and like listen to your commanding officer, sir, yes, sir. It's like the complete opposite of what that is. But they wrote that in there because, then she becomes, I guess, like a stand in for the audience who loves Samus. And it's like, that's how I would react if I met Samus in real life. I don't know. I'm just
Okay.
grasping at straws as to why
Yeah.
this scene even exists.
So I don't know this video game. I certainly didn't play it. But what you describe is instantly stupid to me because it's such a missed opportunity. If you do want to have that dynamic where you have this, this soldier bounty hunter, whatever, um, who recognizes who Samus is and has these, the internal fangirl kind of thing. Think of how many ways you could do that without it being on the nose. All of these like really mundane tasks are assigned to this person and they screw them up, and it shows that they're clearly very nervous, and then you find out why they're nervous, and it's because they're intimidated by Samus, or they're overcome with emotion from meeting a hero, this kind of thing. uh, that's off the top of my head. I'm saying, well, you could treat it that way, and it would be 10 times more interesting than just having somebody jump in place and wave their arms and be like, "Oh my god, you're the best. I can't believe I'm meeting you." So even if you wanna have that dynamic, that there's an argument that it's not a realistic, where it's an inappropriate dynamic, whatever. But even if you wanted to have it, you could do it a dozen different ways that are way more compelling than what you just described to me.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I even thought of like it would be fascinating if the soldier, followed protocol and chain of
Mhm.
command and was very like quiet and stoic all the time. And then they get into a situation where they're like trapped and they're probably going to die. And at
Mhm.
that moment, they can open up and be like, you know what?
Sure.
Like, it's been I've been freaking out from the moment that I met you.
Mhm.
And now it's like, "Oh my gosh, you're learning something about this character."
Yeah.
There's a character trait that's being revealed, there's development there, like, that's
Yeah.
interesting. You
If
didn't
I'm
know
gonna
that
die
before.
if I'm gonna die in this cave, at least I'm gonna die sitting next to my hero.
Oh my
And
god.
then there's this reveal. Yeah, there
Yeah.
there are so many really engaging ways to reveal this dynamic that then you have to sort of mentally backtrack and say, as a viewer or a game player, say, "Okay, how did that affect the things that happened where I didn't know?" Now
Mhm.
the past becomes so much more rich and complex instead of front loading the thing. When you front load the thing, you have to constantly deliver. And the thing that you deliver has to be at least as good as the last thing you delivered. And it's an impossible escalation. You cannot do that. You just can't do it for very long. And also, when that bubble pops, it really pops. It stinks. So you have to avoid that bubble popping situation. And so you have things, you do it like you just described, where all of a sudden you make the past much more rich.
Yeah, you wanna replay the game so you could see it now
Yeah.
with the under the new lens or through the new lens, how she was acting the whole time, knowing now that that she was a big fan of, I mean, it's, like, obvious, but that's not how this stuff works. So, the last example I had was from the new He-Man trailer.
Okay.
The
Yep.
so part of my thesis is that this millennial writing has just become so pervasive. You see it in everything. You see it in, like, all the superhero stuff, all of, like, the blockbuster-y, like, level of shows and movies. I mean, not literally everything. Don't give me examples where it doesn't exist because obviously there are exceptions, but it is pervasive. It is saturated where you do see it in so many places. I saw it in the new He-Man trailer. So I'm watching the new He-Man trailer, and there's this part where He-Man is in a spaceship, and the pilot goes, "This is about to get weird." And then they like take off or whatever. And I'm like, oh God. Like, why does this attitude, this like zany millennial
Yeah.
attitude have to be in everything? You would never say that. You would never be like, you're a pilot of a ship. You spent how many thousands of hours like learning how to fly this thing? And you turn to He-Man and go, this is about to get weird
Yeah,
before you take off. Like, it doesn't even make sense.
that line
Weird
should be
how?
a placeholder when you're writing something where you look at that and say, "Okay, what what do I do here so that there's tension, uncertainty, something like that between these characters where the viewer is thinking like this is this might end up being strange. This is a weird setup." Instead of hey, chuckle chuckle, this is about to get weird. That is the dumbest possible way to play it. In a first draft of a script, I would absolutely write something like that so that I return to it and then actually, with some nuance, flesh out weirdness and tension. That would be really cool. And then you accomplish the same thing while involving the audience and making it not this stupid comic booky kapow sort of thing. It's horrible, and I don't understand. Sorry to cut you off on this, but I don't understand how somebody writes this and thinks it's okay. Like they have no idea that humans would never say this. This wouldn't happen. I don't know how your brain gets trained to a point where you're like, you know what? This is the exact spot where I put in a comic book zinger.
Oh, so yeah. No, I'm so glad you say that. That's the part of like the 75 other like annotated bullet points of my theory is the zinger part because that is the word to use. And Taekwon Joe in the chat said, "Okay, that just happened." And I totally forgot like that. That's like
Yeah.
the example of this millennial Chungus writing is, "So that just happened." Like that is
Yeah.
exactly the line. Um okay, a couple of things. First is that one of the things that this does, and whether this bothers you or doesn't bother you is up to you. It bothers me. Okay, so
Do
I'll
you think
just
it's
say
gonna
that.
bother me?
Yeah, it definitely will bother you because you just said
Okay.
it did.
Okay.
You already answered it. Is
Okay.
that it? It flattens all these characters into
Mhm.
like the same character, right? So it's like this forspoken character who's like, I just move stuff with my mind. And this pilot character who's like, things are about to get weird. And this Metroid character who's like, is this better than being stuck in the office with Gary? This is this is the same character. Like this is not
Yeah.
a different person. Like these are the words that one human being say says, but they're coming out of like it's like a placeholder character that's just getting
Yeah.
shoved in to video games and movies and TV shows and everything. Like this is not a real character. This is
Mhm.
one character that like the millennials character who just, is a different actor and a different voice actor, has a different face, but they say the same exact type of thing. Do you understand
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. Uh, Imagine what it would be like to have one of those people in your friend group in real life.
Oh, you would never be friends with that person. They'd be so annoying. This is like the exact type of person you do not want to hang out with. Just
No,
constant, zany, quirky singers. Like, oh my God. Like like saying things that they think are funny but aren't funny. Like there's really no witticism there. It's just like being goofy. It's like theater kid. It's
It
like
is. It's such
theater
low-level
kid
entertainment.
goofball stuff.
Yeah, where it's like, they take an opportunity for the spotlight to shine on them for 5 seconds to deliver their line.
It's hammy. Yeah.
It's hammy. Yeah, it's hammy and campy to me. Yeah, hammy is great. That's a perfect, way to put it. And I would love for people to imagine how that would play out in real life. That you're hanging out, at somebody's house, you're at a bar, you're doing something, and it's just that guy. That guy would be like, how do we tastefully drop him from the WhatsApp group? Like, how do we have to start a new group text to arrange these things? Which one of you brought this guy into the fold? Because now you're our group's enemy through his actions, not yours, but you're ultimately held responsible for this dolt.
Yeah, he's going up to the bar, about to buy a round of drinks, and goes, "Things are about to get weird." And then he gets all of the drinks and then drops them, and the glass shatters, and he goes, "So that just happened." Right? It's just like it's just like
Yeah.
nonstop one-liners. And here, this isn't even like my big thesis. My big thesis is coming later. So God bless anybody who's listened so far to get to the actual point of this podcast. But before we get to the actual point, when you said zingers earlier, I
Mhm.
connected another weird dot that I don't know
Okay.
should be connected or not. So, you're going to be the judge on this because you're the only one here who can do so. I thought back to the 80s, the time of excess, the time of action movies, the time of steroids, the time of the action
Yes.
hero, and the action one liner. So we had, Arnold Schwarzenegger impaling the bad guy on a steam pipe, and the steam is billowing out of his guts. And he goes, "Why don't you let off a little steam?"
Right.
Okay. Or whatever. There are a million of these
Mhm.
Bruce Willis and Stallone, Van Damme, whatever. There would be some kind of like punny or like witty
Yeah.
one liner that the action hero would say after
Mhm.
killing the bad guy. And this became a joke because it was so hokey. Like
Yeah.
it was so lame. Why was it hokey? Why was it lame? Because it would never happen in real life. Like you would
Right.
never impale a human being on a steam pipe and go, "Why don't you let off a little steam?" Or, you know, you like wrap a chain around their neck and like throw them off a cliff and, be like, hang around. I don't know, whatever it was,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like this was so stupid. It was considered like the bottom of the barrel cinematically, like the worst writing. Okay. That's what all of this is now.
Yeah.
This is all like action hero one liner witticisms.
Mhm.
And so many of these characters are just saying what this, like the stupidest wittiest thing that the script writer could come up with in that moment rather than what an actual human being would say in that moment, right? Because that's
Right.
why it is um, inauthentic, and we're going to get to authenticity later. But it's an inauthentic response to a situation. It's a
Yes.
very like contrived response. It's a movie response. It's not what a real person would ever say,
Right.
right? So you can like hear the writer write those words as they're coming out of their mouth rather than this having the suspension of disbelief in which you think that that person's actually saying that in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a function to those lines where they always come at the end of a critical sequence, an action sequence, something where you're fighting the bad guy, you kill him by impaling him on the
And we
pipe.
both like those movies. Let's
We love
let's make
these
that clear.
movies.
Yes, love these movies. Not
These are the
hating
best
on these
movies.
movies. Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
but the line always comes at as closure to that sequence. And that's a sort of useful device. It's almost like the, Porky Pig saying "That's all, folks" at the end of a cartoon. you know? But it's never happening in the middle. And that doesn't happen in real life because as things are developing, you don't know when a sequence is ever over. You don't. Only in retrospect do you know where you move on to the next chapter. There's no clean kind of thing except for stuff like the 100-meter dash has a clear endpoint where everybody knows it's over. As you are grocery shopping, you kind of don't know when it's over until it's over, and you're pushing your cart back to the car. So you only have the perspective that's looking back to if you wanted to mark that closure somehow with a goofy line, you could have. Uh, but in movies, it's all constructed. It's all done by a writer. And well, here's the perfect opportunity to have your, witty, punny little zinger that hopefully people remember as being the bow on top of that scene that they really liked.
Yeah.
Um, but in real life, there are no opportunities for this. There just aren't.
No, and while we love those movies, you and I love those
Yes,
movies.
they're the best.
They were not considered, the height of cinema. Like
No.
they were what they were, and they served their purpose, and they were wildly entertaining and stupid. I mean, movies like Commando and Bloodsport and Predator and all of those movies. But they they kind of fulfilled their own purpose. It was like they existed in their own little corner,
Yeah.
and you knew what you were getting, and you were happy with that. What I think is the difference is that this quirky, contrived, witty, punny millennial slop is everywhere. It's breached
Yeah.
containment. Like it's not just confined to Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. It's just
Right.
everywhere, and it's all characters, and it's not just a button on a scene that you're like, haha, that was clever. It's just
No.
how everyone talks. Like there, that to me is a huge, huge, huge difference that has to be articulated.
No, it's a tremendous difference. It's huge, and I wish I understood why so many people are okay with it, because I'm massively bothered by things that are meant to be real that are not real at all, that are contrived like this. Uh, I have a huge problem, and this goes, um, movies, books, YouTube videos especially. I don't like when a YouTube video, somebody's presenting the thing, and you know it's not how they would explain anything. It's just they're simply presenting, or they're clearly working from a script in a way that, like, that script is totally divorced from who they are. I'm not saying everything should be unscripted. It's not that, but it's like, okay, I look at your operation and I know that, you paid somebody on Fiverr to go on Chat GPT and research this and write it. And now this person who I follow on Twitter and see how they think about things and how they talk about things would never ever put this information together this way. They would never use these words in their head to describe it. And now they're on screen saying it. So it's everything from YouTube to films like that. And now, there's a great deal less interaction with people than there used to be. There's less real life than there used to be. And for many people, there's almost no real life. And so you'd think that at this point, the value of reality would skyrocket, that you would want this. You would desperately need this because it's so rare in your actual life. And the opposite has happened. The opposite has happened where it's like, yeah, I want the quirk chungus.
Okay. Well, you just teed it up. Here
Have
is the
I?
new yes, here's the new theory. Is that so? What is the main thing when it comes to building a YouTube channel or, your social media presence that is discussed? Authenticity.
Yeah.
That's the number one, that's the paramount thing that everyone talks about is that you need to be authentic. Whether you're like building clay ovens in the wilderness or you're, describing uh strange mathematic quirks or you are the greatest beauty guru in the world.
Mhm.
Authenticity is king. People have to believe that you're passionate about what you're talking about, that you know what you're talking about. They like to hear you talk about that thing. So, my new theory is that there has been this like inverse relationship between the rise of authenticity in online content and the steadfast decline of authenticity
Mm,
in narrative content, in scripted content, in like
yeah.
movies and television, is that things in like the movie world are getting more and more or less and less authentic
Mhm.
as people in droves have left that behind for what is the most authentic. Like one
Yeah.
of the things that I remember talking about so long ago, this has to do with comedy. So like comedy is something that I've always been really interested in. And I noticed over a decade ago that the interest in scripted comedy was just plummeting because of the internet. Because what happened is that
Oh,
it turns out that real people are so much weirder and funnier than anything that you could make up.
it's not
Because
even
why do
close.
you need why do you need Will Ferrell to act goofy or John C.
Right.
Riley to act like a doofus when you have a million people who are 10 times weirder and more of a doofus, but are real and
Yes.
making videos probably every single day. You can follow their weird doofus life.
Yeah.
Like how you can't those two things can't compete.
All day long, I send you things, and you send me things on Twitter that's just people being funny, people saying funny things about whatever. And they're not comedians. They're just people you'd want to hang out with, that you'd want to be friends with, and they had a funny take on a thing. When have I ever sent you or you sent me a Jimmy Fallon skit? Has this
Never.
this is when I will know that it's over. Like, if you send me one of those things, it's immediate, like, 911 call for a wellness check. Like, I don't know what's happened to this man, but here's his address. He just sent me a Jimmy Fallon skit. You need to get there right now and probably bring a gun.
Yeah, definitely. Or any clip at all from anything that was scripted. It's
Yeah,
all actual people all the time and has
way
been for a
funnier.
long time because it's just way funnier.
Yep.
So I don't know if like Hollywood is purposefully doing this or if it's an emergent thing that like people want less authentic things in their movies
Mhm.
because they get authentic all day long on their phone. So they want something
Yeah.
that's like chungussy and silly and like the perfect zinger.
Yeah.
Maybe they want the perfect zinger all the time. I don't
Mhm.
know. I mean, it certainly seems that like that's the case. But when we talk about movies, so one movie that I thought of after I finished recording my Unk Slop Menu podcast that I was really remiss that I didn't mention that I absolutely love is Sling Blade.
Oh,
Sling
yeah.
Blade
I
is a
love Sling Blade.
phenomenal movie. I had a category on
Yeah.
my menu that was, it was like movies everyone likes, and
Mhm.
it's just like movies that I can't imagine someone watching and being like, "I didn't care for that." And it was like Shawshank Redemption and The Godfather were the ones that I mentioned. a third one could have been Sling Blade.
You think
I
Sling Blade would be that universally appreciated?
what is not to like in that movie? Maybe I'm just, like, too biased.
I I think it's awesome, but I also
Yeah.
have known 50 people like Carl, in my life.
So
When
we're just biased and
we're biased because we see a guy that's, not all there and, complex and fixing machinery and be like, "Oh, that's an old friend."
but, like, Carl is never going, "So that just happened." Like, this like,
No.
your
No, he's
suspension
not.
of disbelief in that movie is 100% the whole way through. Every single character in Sling Blade, you believe.
Yeah.
You believe.
Yeah.
You're like, "That's a real person."
Yes. Yeah.
The
One
little
of the
kid, the
probably
mom, the terrible boyfriend, like, these aren't just real people.
yeah, Dwight Yoakam as the boyfriend being just a piece of garbage is exceptional. It's perfection. Really one of the most underrated, not just performances, but, like, writing that character in and writing it the way they did was perfection. I say, you've known 50 guys like Carl. I've known 50,000 like Dwight Yoakam's guy.
Yeah.
You know? It just nailed every single little piece of that. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. Um, ah, yeah, no, I actually saw Sling Blade, a lot later. I can't remember when it was, but it was years after it came out, and it was, one of those things where I guess I didn't realize that it was a fit for me or that I should watch it. And then, I had a friend in college that was like gobsmacked that I hadn't seen Sling Blade. It's like, this is the one movie that you would really love. And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I'll watch it." So I was late to the party and felt kind of stupid about that, where I, got it from a friend named LimeWire back in the day. LimeWire hooked me up with it. I watched it on my computer and it's like, "Oh, I wish I'd seen this in the theater and, like, been able to talk about it with my friends for the last however many years." Yeah, no, I swung and missed on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's a good example to use.
baseline movie,
It
yeah.
is like, watch Sling Blade and how the characters interact, how they act, what their fears and motivations and all of that stuff are, and
Mhm,
then watch one of these movies that have these quirk chungus millennial characters that are like, so that just happened, and like, tell me it's not a stark difference.
hopefully the chat can help with this because Kevin, you probably won't be able to. I wanna watch a movie that's like this. I wanna watch a I wanna watch a Quirk Chungus movie that completely and perfectly exemplifies all the problems that you're talking about. Because obviously I don't watch these. I avoid almost everything that's recommended to me because I'll, let it play, watch the trailer, read the description, whatever, and think, absolutely not. And then I'll load up, you know, something on Acorn, BritBox, or Masterpiece Theater and uh, watch a very nice, series of murders in a small town in 1986 England. Conrad says Guardians of the Galaxy. I so I don't think they fit because that's kinda like part of it in a good way to me.
Well, and also the characters in Guardians of the Galaxy are well defined.
Yeah.
Like, Rocket is Rocket. Like, you understand Rocket. Uh, you
Yeah.
know, Groot literally just says, "I'm Groot." Um, so I understand that it's James Gunn, and James Gunn for sure is like in that Gen X uh kind of over the top quirkness, quirk chungusy category.
Mhm.
However, I don't think Guardians of the Galaxy fits simply because the characters are well defined and so that the dialogue, like, One of the big problems I have with like true Quirk Chungus dialogue is that any character could say those words. It does
Yeah,
not matter which character in your film or in your
that's
TV
true.
show says the Quirk Chungusy thing. Um, Anybody could, and
That's a
it
problem.
Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't pass that test to me. I don't think. It's been a long time since I watched that. I mean, I do know that like the blue guy says like I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. Like that's pretty, but that was funny. So
Right. You know,
yeah.
you mentioned something that this is just like this is a rule, okay? That goes in almost everything. You say any character could say that line. Don't ever write anything that a different character can say. That this is like a general rule in life. You know, Kevin, would you have ever recorded a Vsauce 2 video and said something that somebody else on YouTube could have said? You never would have done this. It would have been a kiss of death. It would have been stupid. It would have been the time to click away from the video. You know, you don't put a thing in a movie that any other character on the screen or in the scene could say instead. You know, when you're talking to people, when we go back to, you know, the pesky thing that is real life, don't say stuff that somebody else in the group could just as easily say. You're going to be boring and dumb. You're going to be an unappealing person. People don't want to date the NPC. They don't want to be friends with the NPC. They don't really want to read NPCs in books or in movies, and they don't want to see an NPC YouTube host. They just don't. Don't be an NPC. This is a good. It's a really important concept that you'd think would be asked constantly with something like a movie, where you would look at every exchange and say, can only these two people make it? Or this person in this situation, could you replace them with anyone else in this plot and have it, you know, proceed the way it is? If the answer is yes, you've got a problem. You should take a little time to reconfigure that so that it's unique. And nobody's bothering to do this.
Well, one of the reasons that you would do this is because you don't know people. Like, if you
Yeah.
don't understand people or
Mhm.
like different people, then how are you
Mhm.
going to write them? So,
Yes.
what you do instead is you just write Kirk Chungus lines.
Yeah.
And now it's a shortcut. Like, you don't, it's like easy mode. It's like the easy button on writing where you just come up with a funny line and that replaces character development because you don't
Yeah.
have to do that anymore. Like,
Mhm.
congratulations, you just kind of bypassed the hard part of writing. And if the audience likes it, then like, why bother?
Yes. Yeah.
That's kind of where we're at. But there are a lot of ways in which, movies are inauthentic. Uh, so like there was this other example. So it's not just the dialogue. It's also like casting and premises. Like there are so many ways in which movies have like this just weird inauthenticity to them. Um, One came up the other day. There's this new comedy that has Kim Kardashian in it that looks like a Hangover ripoff
Yes. Yes.
where it's like her and her gal pals like on like a,
They go to
you know,
Vegas
girls' night out in Vegas.
because
And it's
nobody's
like
ever done a weird group trip to Vegas before as a concept, have
it's
they?
never happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And someone pointed out like these four women would never be friends or like caught dead hanging out together in real
Yeah.
life. Like this is such BS. It's, and it's the same thing that I'm talking about with the dialogue. It's like the very conceit of this film of like these four, like Kim Kardashian. I don't remember the other three actresses who are put together, the ensemble cast. This person's like, this is BS. Like this is not, essentially not authentic. Like this would
Mm.
never happen. I don't buy it. It's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. There's only really one way, I think, to get that, and it's just constantly mixing it up with reality. And that is So this goes back to really the original problem of the slop chicken and egg. Is the problem with the supply, or is the problem with the demand? And I think it's self-reinforcing at this point, where I think, the audience often doesn't even know that what they're seeing is inauthentic, because they haven't had experiences with people that would show them that it's inauthentic. Oddly, really oddly, this happens with people talking about politics a lot. It's the seminal problem with talking about, political stuff, is how infrequently one side, uh, one side understands the other to the point where, they need to realize that I'm going to say this thing, and for this group of people, they're not going to regard that as being, a decent, authentic way to live or a smart way to live. An example of this is there are a lot of people talking about, uh, uh, freedom for, a big label, but there are a lot of people in the world who honestly don't want the responsibility of it. They'd like, a lot of things to be figured out for them. They'd like limited choices because they're overwhelmed by massive choices. I know I've told this story 100 times on the podcast, but I had a really seminal moment for me in Romania, where I went to a grocery store with somebody there, and I was going bonkers over this huge, huge cheese selection. And the woman said, I really miss when, in the 80s, when I went to the corner store with my grandmother and we asked for cheese, and there was just this brown paper wrapped thing that said cheese on it on the shelf, and he handed us our cheese. And she didn't like all the choices. She sincerely did not want to have to go to the grocery store and decide out of 50 cheeses which one she was in the mood for, how much she wanted to spend on cheese. Just didn't want any of that. Even though that's objectively a good situation, she valued the simplicity of, I want cheese, you put cheese in my hand, problem solved. You know, you have to understand that somebody thinks that way in a totally valid way, and they're not going to value you saying, life is amazing the more cheeses you have. You have to meet somebody like that. You have to have an experience like that to know that it's going to fall completely flat. And then you ask yourself, okay, how do I try to present the value of my 50 cheese life to them in a way that, at the least, not to change their mind, but at least so they'll understand why I like it. This never happens if you don't have that interaction in real life. I like the cheese example because it's so specific, so mundane, and so irrelevant that when you're talking about, stuff like movies, where major plot points are around things like romantic relationships, friendships, honor and betrayal, you've got to have familiarity with how all of those things work in very different ways so that you can put together compelling characters who act in a way that's entertaining, that's insightful. You have to know this somehow, and I don't think you're going to get it. Um, I don't think you're going to get it from ChatGPT. You're not going to get it from following people on Twitter. You're not even really going to get it from watching films that do it really well. That's a good start. That's a really good start. You mentioned The Godfather. There are big, big issues in The Godfather, in the at least the first two, that are generally applicable to most people's lives, even though they aren't running a mafia enterprise. That can get you thinking, but then you have to somehow engage in real life and apply these things, see how they turn out, see other people go through them, recognize that they're going through them. Well, if your whole life is just sitting around and consuming content where that just happened, it's hopeless. It's completely hopeless.
Yeah, there was a really funny thing that went, semi-viral I saw where, um, I believe it was a girlfriend who never watched movies, like, did not know anything about movies.
Mhm,
Her boyfriend was adamant that she watch a bunch of movies because "I never watch movies. I don't know any good movies."
mhm,
And he was like, "Here's the list. This is it's similar to what I did my Unk Slot menu last week.
mhm.
Here's the list of movies." And the list was literally all Marvel movies that came out in, like, the last 15 years. It was like, "Here's the list of movies that you need to watch if we're gonna be together." And it's like, Ant-Man 2.
Oh. Oh.
So, yeah, well, I don't know what you do with that.
This is why I unironically do have an argument for why a movie like Over the Top is extremely important, okay? And for anybody who hasn't watched it, the plot of the film is that a truck driver reconnects with his estranged son and then wins his love through, uh, progressing in an arm wrestling tournament.
And his truck. Do not
Well,
leave that out.
he needs the truck.
No, he wins his love and his truck
And a
back.
truck. Yeah, a brand new truck. That's
Oh,
like the
brand new
number one
truck.
prize because all the people competing are, truckers.
Truckers. Yeah.
He has money in a truck. Uh, but at the core of that is a guy completely struggling to connect with the son he doesn't know. That's a very real, sensible problem to have. And even people you do know, I'm sure everybody has a family member, a parent, probably somebody who should be close to them, that they're just different people and they've always struggled to connect and they want to, probably to varying degrees. And the question is, how do you do that? It's a really difficult thing. So, yes, that's in a, you know, stupid movie with a stupid plot. But that problem is very, very real. And then on top of it, it is to what lengths, do you go to matter to your son, to have your son respect you, to love you? Um, how, as the son, how much understanding do you need? How much of a wide net do you need to cast that goes way beyond your upbringing? You're laughing. You're
Yeah, I'm
laughing at
just
my
getting so
thesis.
yeah, deeply the deep psychology of Over the
Yeah.
Top. You're not
I
wrong, but it
it
is funny to do.
Yeah, I mean, the kid grows up very wealthy and then is going to a military school, so his entire experience is limited and very rigid, and he has to, you know, go way beyond that to even have a basic understanding of how his father lives. So there are all these steps where, like, oh, you gotta recognize that and then kind of respect it, and, of course, in the film, he grows to love it, but these are real problems. This is stuff that happens all the time. So even in a schlock movie about arm wrestling, uh, there are there are real life pieces that, when you think about the things you do encounter, how many people have, uh, well, you go on the Tumblr wing of Twitter or something else, Blue Sky, and a lot of people hate their dads. a lot, a lot of it seems into their 40s, their existence is based on how much they hated their dad growing up. I didn't have that problem. It was awesome, but yeah, I see a lot of people stuck in that mode. They never broke out of it. Whereas this, you know, quirky character in a stupid movie managed to. This is important.
Well, let me give you another thing I thought of today with this. So keep in mind my authenticity versus I guess inauthenticity idea. This was happening before so the drive to being enamored by
Mhm.
something that's more authentic started before social media. It started with reality TV
Mm.
because before social media was a thing, reality TV was like the next big thing. And think about how uh like people didn't want to watch music videos on MTV anymore. They just didn't. It was like over. However, they all wanted to watch complete zilch nobodies in a singing contest called American Idol.
Yeah.
How weird is that? Okay? This is the
Yeah,
type of
that's
thing like
actually
these are the dots I'm trying to connect here
uh-huh,
is that
that's
like
good.
before the internet, it doesn't have anything to do with TikTok, okay? Culturally, we no longer wanted to watch at that time, I don't know, Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys, whoever was popular at that time, Beyonce, Destiny's Child. That was so much that like scripted, polished,
Yeah.
produced, like $1 million perfect example of music was so much less interesting than some ding dong from the backwoods
Yeah.
trying to sing like one of their songs
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, I was in,
because it was real.
it was real. I was in, England during the time when, Susan Boyle exploded. And I don't know how many people remember, uh, her doing the song from Les Mis and just blowing away the Western world because you're seeing something that you don't expect anything of that quality to come out of this person. And not only was it fantastic, but it was like singularly good. And seeing the way, that was on the British version of the show, um, responded to that authenticity. It was really unique to see because I hadn't seen that so much in the past. There are a couple moments where I think it's happened on that scale, but I wasn't there for them. I wasn't around. One of them was very, very topical with the Winter Olympics starting. But this is why the Miracle on Ice in 1980 is a big deal because it was authenticity versus manufactured. It was a bunch of college kids versus essentially a full time professional hockey team in the Soviets. And there was value in seeing real versus synthetic, and then seeing real beat synthetic when on paper it shouldn't have happened at all. That's why 56 years later, people are still super, super into it. Um, there's there's a moment in the actual footage of the event. Jim Craig, who went to Boston University, um, this is part of the 1980 hockey team story too. Is the New England kids versus the Midwestern kids, and that's the way hockey broke down. It just did, where like hockey came out of two places, New England and like Wisconsin, Minnesota, that part of the country. And Jim Craig happened to be one of the Boston guys. And when when it's over, the camera zooms in on him, and he's looking in the crowd and says, "Where's my father?" You can't get more authentic than that. You can't. That is the most authentic moment probably in all of sports, and it was on TV. Everybody got to see it. You don't get that same moment if the Soviets win and a guy who has spent his entire life training and is fully expected to win skates around looking for his father or his mother or his wife. It's not the same thing because that authenticity is not baked in to the situation. I wasn't watching TV in 1980, so I only see that one in highlights. Um, but you recognize it as being incredibly and irreplaceably authentic. And I don't know how we have a bunch of these moments, whether it's something like The Miracle on Ice or it's Susan Boyle or, a guy named Paul was fantastic with opera singing that you didn't expect. You get these authentic moments of authenticity.
Mm,
Yeah.
that works.
You get these incredibly powerful moments of authenticity. And I don't know how you have this vast storage of them and people writing movies and TV aren't saying, we can't do it naturally because we're television, we're a film studio, but how close can we get to replicating this? And they don't seem to have any interest at all in doing it if they can even recognize it.
Yeah, I don't know. So I that's my new theory is that yeah, for whatever reason, the super popular thing, and I understand why, is authentic. It's, from reality TV to just reality internet. But at the same time, the way that Hollywood has gone seems to be the opposite direction. It's just nothing but like dinosaurs and
Yeah.
and superhero explosions and characters who are interchangeable with their dialogue. They're just saying action movie one-liner, quirk, chungus, millennial speak, and like all of it. The casting, who cares? It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
If it's not, like period appropriate, the casting doesn't matter. Like none of it matters. The authenticity doesn't matter
Yeah.
at all. And the question is that a feature or a bug? Because it seems like a feature at this point when it's been going on for so long and it's so deliberately done. I mean, I know that a lot of these movies bomb, but they keep kind of making the same choices over and over and over again. So, and I know they're not like trying to lose. Well, I think a lot of movies do lose money on purpose. That's like a whole other thing, but not all of them can. So,
It's unsustainable to do this forever. And I say that, and then immediately I think maybe it's completely sustainable.
maybe.
Maybe there is no end to this. Um, we talked with Psychic Pebbles forever ago about like the future of streaming, and we actually you know hit on things like being able to construct your own movie with AI years before any AI tool of any kind was possible. It's been crazy to see um, things come out with Sora, for example, where that's precisely what people are doing is saying, I want to see this thing, and then they wait a little bit for it to churn, and then they hit play on the thing that they wanted to see. Um, is that authenticity to them? Probably it is, because it's a faithful representation of the thoughts that they had and the thing that they wanted to see. And so to me, the big question on all of this is, can, you know, you as the viewer, can you recognize and discriminate when it comes to authenticity? I wonder how many people are honest with themselves or capable of being honest with themselves to answer that question.
Well, I think that that was brought up in a way in the episode chat by Spencer, saying that like perhaps the Chungus writers they are being authentic because that's how they talk with their friends. Like they're just, I don't know, are they all just trying to one up each other with Chungusy quirky one-liners?
You know what
I
you
don't
should do,
know.
Kevin? There's only one way for us to know the truth, and it's for you to hang around the playground of an elementary school with a video camera to capture footage of the young people interacting. I I don't think anything could go wrong.
You do realize that like phones have video recording capabilities now. I love
No,
that your
you need a
Slop
big
mind is
VHS
like a
camera.
huge, like obviously
Yeah,
recording video camera
yeah.
from
You're gonna have a lot of
1987.
gear. So you'll have to
Right.
pull up in a van, probably that doesn't have any windows.
Like Marty McFly from Back to the Future
Yeah.
with the huge
Yeah.
JVC camcorder.
Yeah. And if you just, if you just hang around kids filming them,
Right.
nobody will notice. You won't be on the news. You won't be on Twitter. It won't do any harm to your professional reputation.
Right.
So there's no risk at all. And we will know the truth. We will know the realistic behavior of the slop fiends.
Right. And what'll happen is as I'm getting hauled away in handcuffs, one of the kids will turn to the camera and go, "So that just happened." And scene. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah. I know we're wrapping up on this, but Cole just said in the chat, authenticity is like telling somebody, just be yourself. And that actually is a really nearly impossible bit of instruction for people to follow, because virtually nobody knows what it means to be themselves on command. They can't just be like, oh, well, I do this because I know myself so well. Like, no, generally, oh, relax, just be yourself. It's an awful thing to say. It's guaranteed to freeze like everybody except extremely talented actors who then get into a mode where they're playing a version of themselves instead of actually being themselves. Hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a lot.
That
So
was a lot.
I'm glad it wasn't exactly 119 hours worth, but
No, got 118 left on my SD card if there's more that you have to say.
oh, no, I think I'm good. I'll let the the brain rest for now. I am interested in hearing people's responses to it.
Yeah.
Really great episode chat here during the live stream. Thank you everybody for jumping in for our very first live stream. It's funny that we just did this without telling anyone really.
Yeah.
So it was very out of the blue for you, not out of the blue
Yeah.
for us. It's something that we'd been working on. And but look forward to this from now on.
Yes. And
Popping up in the YouTube feed.
somebody mentioned guests a long time ago. We're excited to get back into a
Oh,
little of that.
guests are coming back. Yes. We wanted to
Live
figure this out
guests.
first before we brought guests back, but
Yeah.
there's an order of operations that have to be adhered to, and we've
These are like
begun that process.
these are like the preseason games where you
Yeah.
see what you got, who you got, how they're doing it, work out some of the problems, fire a few people. So
Mhm.
somebody's on the chopping block in this operation. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a 50% chance it's me. So
yeah,
I may
yeah.
not see you guys next week.
Once we close this, we're just going to flip a coin and decide who's never coming back.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, all right. Well, we will be back. We'll be back next week. And until then, see you, Space Cowboys. Thank you very much for joining us.